Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to have so much fun. I've already had so much fun chatting with my guest before the program that this is just going to be a delight. But we're going to be talking about that subject that everybody loves and hates right now, and that's online meetings and things like that. And so please join me in welcoming Lauren Sergy to our program today. Welcome, Lauren.
Hello, Deb. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Lauren Sergy is a public speaking and interpersonal communication expert who has helped thousands of professionals become more powerful communicators. She has worked with clients and audiences in Canada, the United States, the UK, and beyond, including companies like KPMG, Grant Thornton, Cargill, T-Mobile, and many more. She teaches business communication seminars at the University of Alberta. Her first book, The Handy Communication Answer Book, was featured on the Best Reference Books of 2017 list by Library Journal. Her latest book, and we'll definitely be talking about it, is called Unmute: How to Master Virtual Meetings and Reclaim Your Sanity, and it's currently available online. So again, Lauren, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I always like to talk to my guests to find out how it is that they got to where they are today. So give us a little bit and tell us how it is that you discovered that this is your passion in life.
Well, it was kind of a strange, long, winding road here. I initially started my professional career as what I like to call the world's worst librarian.
I was just wondering, that's kind of an oxymoron here.
It really is. It really is. And what I found was that it was more that the business environment of working in libraries just wasn't really well suited to my personality. It's a wonderful industry. Strongly recommend it for anyone who's inclined. However, I wanted to do other stuff.
Right.
While I was working in libraries, though, I very quickly got shoehorned into positions that were involved in staff training.
Okay.
Because I could basically convince the most irritable rural library staff who wanted nothing to do with any of the very expensive databases we wanted them to use, that these databases were the best thing in the world. So I was really good at giving persuasive training talks. And, the conferences that I spoke to, the libraries, the institutions that I would speak at, the people organizing these events would come to me afterwards and say, "That's great. Never thought that we would love these databases. Can you come back and teach us how to present the way you do?" And immediately it was like a light bulb in my head. Yes. Absolutely, I can, because I have a background in film acting, in radio, in performance art, in classical rhetoric, which is where a lot of my approach comes from. So all of those pieces combined with the knowledge work that you learn as a librarian just knit
perfect fit
right together. And I hung out my shingle, and here I am.
Perfect. I love it. And you have been one of the people who has obviously taken advantage of the little thing called the pandemic. I loved it here in the States. You're up in Alberta, and here in the States, when everybody went, we were told 2 weeks. We're just going to shut everything down for 2 weeks, and it'll be all better. And we all went.
Pandemics are fast.
Right. 2
Never mind
weeks.
the 1918 Spanish flu.
No big deal. And, but I don't think that many people thought 18, 19 months later, we would still be having so many issues. And obviously there's many reasons for that, but, we're still working from home. We're attending meetings from home. We're going to conferences virtually. And, that's what I want to talk with you about, because it is something that we are doing. And more importantly, we're going to continue doing it. And so you teach people how to really survive in this now virtual online world.
Yep. We're not going back. We're not going back to what it was before, even once the pandemic is over. And Deb, when this whole thing went down back in March, one of the first things I did was, after everyone kind of went shell-shocked for a couple of weeks there up in North America, because things pretty much went down at the same time between our two countries. I gave my clients a couple of weeks and then started calling them. I had already been working on doing training that was specific to virtual. My business had been virtual, partially virtual, about 50 since the beginning. It's what enabled me to grow my business. So it was a familiar, comfortable environment to me. But, you know, when you're dealing with organizations like financial institutions and academics to a certain degree and engineering firms, they're very traditional. And the security issues around going virtual and the fact that, no, we have to be in the office, we have to see each other, I knew was going to throw them for a loop. So I said, hey, gather your team. Let me do a complimentary training webinar, 30 minutes, just to get everyone up to like the base level of competency. And yes, indeed, people took me up on it. They were very happy about it. And the thing that kept coming up was, but, you know, we're after 6 months, it'll all be okay. So if people don't really pick up on it, it's okay. We'll white knuckle our way through and then we'll be back in the office. And I thought, no, you won't.
Yeah.
Because Sure. I had too hoped that would happen because I missed human beings. But realistically, no, that's not the trajectory that history has taught us these things go on. But also, by the time that 6 months was up, my thought was, that is long enough for this genie to be permanently out of the bottle.
Yeah.
Because now you've had to set up the systems. Now everyone's gotten used to it. And now it's also become a client and stakeholder expectation that this is a mode of communication that's available to them should they want it. Plus, what's going to happen when all the CEOs and all the managers and C-suite people discover, oh, you know what? I actually didn't like spending 3/4 of my life on an airplane going from meeting to meeting from coast to coast.
Or paying for my employees to do that.
Paying for my employees. So indeed, as things went on, it was about the second quarter of this year, requests for training in video conferencing skills and virtual meeting skills shot through the roof. It was easily double or triple what was being asked of me at the beginning of the pandemic, because it was starting to sink in. And what was also starting to sink in was, hey, wait a minute, we've been at this for over a year and it's not getting better. We still suck. Yes, everyone knows you shouldn't see your bed in the background, but the meetings are still not engaging. I still don't have the level of polish I want. We are still hugely stressed out. So that's how we got to today, basically.
You know, I still hear this from people who say, well, what difference does it make? You know, I'm just, why do I have to care about my background, my sound, all of those various things? So what do you tell people who go, you know, why does it matter?
Yeah. What does it matter? It shouldn't matter. I often hear that. It shouldn't matter. Oh, my darlings. Yes, it does. Communication happens in context of what's around us. And when we think about communication, many people just think about the speaking part. But you have to remember that we're also most strongly a visual species. And we layer in meaning based off of what we see, what we hear, what's around us, all of that sort of thing. Now, when we were in the offices, didn't matter so much. Our backdrops were settled for us. It was the office. It was the boardroom. It was a given.
And it might have been ugly.
It might have been ugly.
It was the office.
Exactly. The space had context. And your clothes, same thing. Maybe you weren't the fanciest dresser in the world, but you were seeing people. So whatever your office uniform was, or whatever your business look was, that's what you would wear. You now stick people at home. And they have control over their environment, and they have the option of slumming it all day in their jams, which I am fully a fan of, quite frankly.
Oh yeah,
I tell people, not on camera,
I'm never putting on shoes again.
no, hard pants, ew. But those decisions, we now had to consciously think about those decisions, make those decisions, figure out what message it is we're trying to send. And a lot of people basically never had to think about all of the other inputs
Right.
that affect our message. So yes, backdrop matters. Yes, appearance matters. Yes, your ability to be on camera matters, because all of that layers in meaning to your message. And where it really affects people is our perception of your competence. Yes, it affects how we perceive people as being competent or not, as well as trust.
Right.
There's a big trust factor. Do you show up in the way that I need you to show up, or that I expect you to show up?
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I did a post on Facebook. I have these little memes that are, the little inspirational ones. And it said, what advice would you give to someone starting out in business? And my response to my own meme, because, you're wanting to generate conversation, was, if you don't take your business seriously, no one else will either. And, and this is the same thing. If I'm, sitting here, slouched in my chair with, a t-shirt on and the unmade bed in the background, nobody is going to take what I say seriously unless somehow that is contextual.
Yeah, exactly. And if you expect them to do it, what you're basically doing is asking the person on the other side of the camera to do more brain work. This is a really cognitively heavy mode of communication. Like it taxes our brains much more than in-person does for a variety of reasons.
It does.
But when we see things that aren't contextually appropriate, that just don't make sense or don't look good, and we have to actively think our way around it, guess what? Now they have to think harder. Now they're not going to hear as much of your message. They're going to be more tired afterwards, and you're asking them to overlook some pretty big signals. Don't ask people to think too hard.
Right. Oh yeah, because we have enough problems.
Exactly. Make it easy for them.
Right. Well, and that's part of why we're so tired after all of these things. And that's if you just have one. I mean, there are days where I will have 6. I had one day fairly recently where I had 8 Zooms. By like 5, I'm not paying attention. By 8, my camera's off. I mean, it's just like, no. But is it that mental stimulus? And why is it different than just sitting in an in-person meeting?
Yeah, it is that mental stimulus that's fatiguing you, very much so. Some of the big differences between virtual and in-person, well, it all obviously revolves around the fact that we're using a technological middleman to actually speak with one another. So things like social cues and nonverbal cues don't work. They can't work the same way in this technology. It's impossible. One of the big signals is eye contact, of course. If you want to make eye contact from the other person's perspective, you can't look at them. You have to look at your camera aperture.
Right.
Unless you've got a nice fancy setup where the lens is behind the screen. Let's face it, most people don't have that.
Right.
And most people don't need that. Don't put that burden upon yourself. But you do have to look away from the face, which your brain is telling you desperately, look at the face, look at the face. That's where the info is.
Right.
And instead engage with the camera. You have to be aware of what's happening with your gestures, because if everything's happening down here, you can see my upper body wiggling back and forth, but you can't see the hands. So, okay, now this becomes a conscious decision to bring it up. Technological delays, those micro delays of half a second, a quarter of a second, just between the connections where one person talks and then there's a silence, those throw us off. So a lot of the things that we would normally rely on to have a good, easy conversation, you can't rely on them here, and you have to work around them. Another big factor where people really feel fatigued is that as soon as there's a camera on us, we feel like we're on.
I know. We're like,
we're on. Now I'm performing.
Yes. You're thinking, I got an itch. I got a this. I got a that.
Now I'm performing. And you are. You need to have a bit of that attitude to really do well in
the
this
news anchor thought process.
Exactly. You have to understand that is part of this medium, but it's exhausting to be on all the stinking time. And we've kind of done that to ourselves. I think at first it was, if we should, because we can't see each other and we can be on camera. So we must be on camera.
Right.
Then it became habitual. And we didn't stop to think, do we need to be on camera? Should we be on camera? How much camera can I take
Mhm.
during a given day? So your story about having, was it said that you said 6 or 8?
Well, one day 8, but
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for 6. Mhm.
Not uncommon for 6. That totally tracks with what I've
Mhm.
found with many of my clients.
Mhm.
I love asking my virtual audiences,
Mhm.
what over the course of a week, what is your average
Mhm.
hours spent in
Right.
virtual
Mhm.
meetings? And of course it varies,
Mhm.
but the most common answer is between 15 and 20, which
Mhm.
is a lot.
Mhm.
That is a lot of time in one week to
Right.
be on camera.
Mhm.
But the higher up the ranks you get, the
Mhm.
more responsibility someone
Right.
has,
Mhm.
the more people they need to interact with. This
Mhm.
definitely goes for small business owners
Mhm.
because everything is on you.
Mhm.
The higher those numbers got. So hearing people say between 25 and 36 hours a week is not uncommon.
Wow. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a horrendous amount of time.
Right.
And that
Well,
would exhaust anybody.
right. And we're talking about meetings.
Yeah.
There's also, things like Microsoft Teams where you pop on quick, you chat with somebody for 5 minutes and then you turn it back off. And all of those various things are adding into that.
Yeah. When we're not able to pop across the office, when
Mhm.
part of this too is that people couldn't see us work. We couldn't see other people work. Do
Mhm.
they think I'm working? Do
Right.
they know I'm working?
Mhm. Mhm.
Are they working? I'm
Mhm.
going to call a meeting because now we're all
Yeah.
visible
Mhm.
and working
Mhm.
together,
I'm going to
whether
make
or
sure
not
that they're
you're
at least sitting at their computer. Mhm.
exactly. So it
Mhm.
became a method of proving that we're working, but
Mhm.
also taking roll call.
Mhm.
And we haven't really gotten away from that
Mhm.
yet. So the struggle that we're getting with now is how do we reduce
Mhm.
the amount of time we're spending in meetings in
Right.
general?
Oh, yeah. And we all know we
Yeah,
spend too much time in meetings. And we have meetings to talk about our meetings.
exactly. But with virtual, it becomes the added question of how many of these meetings that I do need to attend, if they do need to be meetings,
Mhm.
how many of them can I take off camera
Mhm.
to give my brain a break?
Right.
Your brain needs a break.
Mhm. Yeah. It's funny. I participated in an online seminar several months ago, and it was a topic that interested me. This is fun. And so, I signed up for it, and, we get going, and it was, they said, now we have a requirement. Your camera must be on. If your camera is not on, we remove you from the meeting. And that bothered me for several reasons. First, I thought, okay, there are people who connect who don't have a camera.
Yeah.
Maybe they're connecting with their phone, all of those various things. So does that mean they can't participate? Maybe I'm having a real bad day and I don't want to be on camera, but I absolutely love listening to the topic. All of those various things. And so I sent that as my feedback afterwards. Of course, I got no response, but, and I know part of that was I'm sure they wanted to make sure that people were actually kind of paying attention, but, it was a free seminar. I mean, or even if we paid, I mean, who cares? But, it did. Part of the problem is there were so many people and so many faces. I mean, we went way past Hollywood Squares and Marsha. Right. We've got the Brady Bunch. We've got Hollywood Squares, and then we've got 50. And there were so many talking heads that it was so incredibly distracting.
Yeah.
Because I got to looking at, I'm like, I don't know who the speaker is. I can't see the little yellow outline. And so I'm just going to look at all these other people and what have they got in their background, and all of those things.
Distraction heavy environment.
Right.
And there's another area where we get really tired with this. So you might have the distractions of all the faces and a situation like that to have the camera. I'm a fan of cameras on,
right,
in some circumstances. A circumstance like that, there should have been no reason to force people to have their cameras on. And realistically, with that many people on the call,
should have all been off.
Bandwidth, they should have been off except for the active speakers.
Right.
You can say, if you have a question, flip your camera on so I can see you, fine. But otherwise, the default becomes camera off. But yes, the distraction of being able to see into each other's spaces is very real. And that's part of the reason for getting everything queued up to send the message that you want, is to make it easy for people to look at you and then get off
right
what your background is, basically. Okay, I'm not even paying attention because it all makes sense. But yes, all of those cameras being on, that's a really big distraction. Then if you look at, again, the environment, the communication environment, what is one thing that many of us have way too many open on our computer?
Windows. We get distracted.
Tabs.
Squirrel.
Scroll. And we can't turn them off because that's all desperately important information that we're going to lose.
Oh, yes.
God forbid we lose that website.
The world will stop.
The world will stop. And I do want my email open. And there is that report. I just had an idea. And then we type away. So we're used to switch tasking. Right. I refuse to call it multitasking, but we're accustomed to switch tasking on computers. So when we sit in front of it, our brains basically go, that's the mode I'm in.
Right. And especially if we have like notifications set, you talk about emails.
Yes.
If you're getting a little ping when either you get an email or social media thing, all of those, no matter what, your brain for a second gets sidetracked. I mean, it doesn't matter if you are listening to the latest, greatest speaker in the world, your brain switches, and because you're thinking, do I care? Do I need to deal with it? It's funny. I have notifications on my phone, and I have to use my phone because I use it as a timer for this program. And I really, really have to make myself not look at those because I would get distracted and think, oh my gosh, I have to deal with this. But yeah, it's another one of those little things. And it's so funny because we all think they won't notice. And so of course we talked about eye contact, maybe they're looking off because they're looking at a different monitor, or worse, we hear tickety, 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 tickety because they're not muted and we're hearing them type, or worse, they take a call. I love those. We always are telling people you're muted. How many times are we saying you need to mute yourself?
Hence the book title, Unmute.
Yes. But there are times where it's the opposite. It's like, okay, we can hear you.
Yeah. And, when we're looking at all of these things, it's very easy to vent about it. And I feel that the venting is important because something we need to recognize is that this is not a perfect solution to in-person. It's an alternative to in-person. In some ways, it is hugely advantageous.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, just the lack of travel time is incredible.
It's fantastic. And you can see people and have the opportunity to develop a relationship that you can only really do when you learn what they look like and how their expressions are. That is wonderful, but we need to acknowledge the limitations of it as well. So things like the distraction, having a million windows open, your phone going off. I'm a big fan of saying, you know what? Don't fight your brain on this. Don't try to exert willpower to ignore all of the distractions because then again,
you're thinking of that.
Your brain is thinking of that. Don't think of pink elephants. But there's a lot of really simple tools that you can use during your meetings or whatever, and settings that are so straightforward, and they remove that burden from you. So you mentioned the phone. Easiest thing to do would be to put it on airplane mode. Nothing gets through, but you still have access.
Oh yeah, I never remember to do that. Doy.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing. It's not going to be perfect. The number of times I've forgotten to do that as well is huge. And then of course the call comes through and you're going, no.
Or we spend half a day thinking nobody loves us, right?
Yes. That's what always happens afterwards with me. But once you put that airplane mode on, what I find is that the urge to check goes off because your brain knows it's not accessible.
Right.
So it basically doesn't matter. So in an online environment, one of my favorite tools are very simple web blockers. I use Strict Workflow. There's a million and one of them out there. But what they do is once you set that website blocker to run for however long it needs to run, you can input which sites you want it to block.
Right.
So whatever your vices are, right? You can have it block Google, like all search engines it can block. I block my email. Unless I know that I'm going to need to refer to it during a call.
Yeah, because you might have clients who are on the call needing to reach you or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really unusual that happens. But if I'm giving a talk or a training session or providing service, that email blocker is on because then my brain isn't saying, what's going on over there?
What am I missing?
So tools like that are actually really important to
turn Facebook off. Just turn it off.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You won't miss anything.
Right. You know, if the world comes to an end, well, okay, the world came to an end.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's hard because we don't want to miss anything, you know, and it depends on what it is. It's, you know, well, I need to make sure that I don't miss something from my boss. Well, you know, okay, you know, but there are ways to deal with these things. You know, I also tell people, you know, I'm not one of these people that answers my phone if I'm in the bathroom. You know, it can wait. And I always, you know, I'm one of those people, if somebody is there, you know, I'm like flushy, right? You know, I'm going to make them pay for it. But, you know, really in 99% of the cases, the world does not come to an end if you miss it. Now, you know, if you are, say, a parent, and, you know, and your kids are somewhere, or, you know, I mean, there are ways where you can get those notifications if something catastrophic has happened. But
and, you know, it's fine to tell people too, if you're in a situation where you might be getting that urgent call in, tell them I'm leaving my phone on because I'm expecting an urgent call. And I apologize, but I will need to take it.
Right.
And look at it this way. That is a behavior that we would have done in person. So if you take the behaviors that we do in person and apply them to online, you'll find that a lot of these problems will go away. But where you get a big branching off of that is that one cue that we need to give people when we're online that we would normally never do in person does have to do with that multitasking. And it's where are your eyes and head going. It's okay to break eye. You don't need to be relentlessly staring at
I know it's really hard because and when we're in person, we are looking around a lot more.
Exactly. We look around. We don't stare at each other relentlessly. We'll look up, we'll look down, off to the side while we think, over to our documents, back to the person. You do want to imitate that when you're in an online environment, again, to give that feeling of normalcy in the communication. But when you do need to pull up that document, when you do need to go hunting for that email or whatever, tell people.
Right.
They can't see what you're doing. So let them know, you know what? I think that I have that number in the spreadsheet.
Hang on. I'm going to, because
let me look it up.
Your focus will have shifted.
Yeah. You can look away. You can do your thing. Oh, I think that's in an email. Let me look it up. Look away, do your thing, then come back to the camera. These kind of deliberate cueing behaviors is what's going to make the conversation feel easier and more natural in the long run, which reduces the stress. Right. It takes some habit and practice, but once you're there, once you lock it in, it's there.
Right. Yeah. You know, and that's why I also like being able to turn the camera off, you know, because if I'm on for a longer period of time and just feeling that fatigue of not wanting to sit and look like I'm engaged, I'm going to turn my camera off. You know, and then there's also times, and, you know, and you go, you know, there's a variety of ways you can actually, you know, in Zoom, you can turn your video on and off. You can also flip something over your lens. I mean, all those various things, but, you know, these are some of my pet peeves. You know, I'm on with somebody and they're eating. You know, and I do it too. I mean, you know, we're on, it's noon my time. If we were just chit-chatting, I might very well have my lunch here. Yeah. If it's just you and I, you know, I might say,
fine.
Yeah. Good. But yeah, and we all, you know, we've started doing virtual cups of coffee, or if it's later in the day, virtual adult beverages, you know, all of these things. But, you know, no, don't sit and eat. You know, that's just, no.
You know, consider who your audience is. Are you on with teams or service providers or people that you've worked with for a long time? You have a different kind of business relationship with them. They've seen you with your hair a mess, pulling it out, you know, going crazy over something that's happened. Those people, you can dial it down a little bit. You can dress down the performance, but you don't want to be chewing on a hoagie in front of some kind, in front of a client that you're trying to prospect, right? This really, really is basic common sense level stuff. Something that you do want to consider, though, is what etiquette applies to which group. And there I find you can overcome a lot of issues, especially within small teams, of people getting annoyed with other people's behavior on camera. And you mentioned the cameras on versus cameras off thing. That's a big one. That is a big point of etiquette. If you are in a small meeting, I strongly recommend setting the expectation for cameras on or off in advance.
Right.
And everyone
Mhm.
needs to show up the same
Mhm.
way. This is really crucial for
Mhm.
small teams
Mhm.
because if everyone's on camera except James,
Mhm. We're like,
James
what's
is-
going on, James?
what's going on, James? Or
Mhm.
James
Mhm.
is sending a signal that he doesn't need to put in the effort.
Right. James
to show
doesn't
up in the
care
same
about
way that
being with us. Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
He's not putting in the
Mhm.
effort. So when I get called in to help teams who
Mhm.
used to get along, but are now having big
Mhm.
interpersonal conflicts through their meetings, that is often one of the behaviors that's actually causing a lot of problem.
Mhm.
A lot of the problems
Mhm.
is the perception you left your camera off because you don't like being on camera.
Mhm.
You're still paying attention. Yeah.
Mhm. But are ya?
But are ya?
Mhm.
It's the equivalent of showing up to the office in jeans and a hoodie
Mhm. Right.
when everyone else is in a three-piece suit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in small teams, this can
Mhm.
have a big impact.
Mhm.
Now, a client meeting, the client sets the tone.
Mhm. Right.
I am going to be on camera,
Mhm.
but they can turn it on and off as they are
Mhm.
comfortable.
Mhm.
A big seminar or a training situation like
Mhm.
that, I would tell people to leave their cameras off
Mhm.
unless
Right.
called on
Yeah.
because of bandwidth. And what does it matter
Mhm.
when there's that many people?
Right.
So
It's fun to see everybody's faces at the start, but
Yeah,
then
that's
it's okay to turn them off. Mhm.
there's 50 of you. I can't see all of you at
Yeah.
once.
And I'm going to, and especially if you're the speaker,
Yeah.
you're going to get distracted,
Oh, yes.
because they're doing stuff and you're like, oh, did I lose you? All of those various things. And so, yeah, it's the camera on, camera off is very complicated, but let's talk a little bit more about camera etiquette. Okay, we've been doing this 18, 19 months. We no longer need to look up your nose or at the top of your head. I love the people. I'm like, okay, you've got a laptop. I understand you've got a laptop. You've also got books. Put your camera, put your laptop on top of those. Build a
Raise
little
that thing
platform.
up.
Do something so that anymore, most cameras are really pretty good. And so we don't have to worry about that. It drives me nuts when somebody is using their phone and we've got the higgledy piggledy jiggly. I'm like, put it on something, but I did one the other day and, talking about placement. And I was this was a meet and greet with this person, got a little one-on-one meeting, never met him before. So, we're learning. And it was so funny because, we've got this horizontal screen and he's in the bottom corner. So I only had a quarter of it. And now I had his full face, but, so I had a lot of background.
Yeah.
And more importantly, wherever he had his camera, he was looking off the entire time. He never made eye contact with me. Now, and I really wanted to say, hey, dude, you can see what I see. Do you not see that? And
it doesn't even occur to most people.
Yeah.
Again, they've never had to think about their interactions from the perspective of basically a TV producer.
Right.
Never had to think of their interactions in that way. And I always think, it's very easy for someone like me who basically has been professionally assessing over this for a long time. It's my job to come in and say that. But when you think of it, no, for many people, it simply hasn't occurred to them.
Right.
And what's more is that they don't understand the impact.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I was
talking,
talking to that gentleman, my first thought was A, he really doesn't want to be talking to me.
Yeah.
B, what is more important? Because, hello, I should be the center of attention. But what was more important? And C, like I said, doesn't he know that this is just not, and it really it was very disconcerting. And, and I mean, this shows you how disconcerting it was. I remember nothing about what we talked about, but I remember how he made me feel.
Yep. Classic Maya Angelou, right?
Yep.
Maya Angelou for the Zoom.
Yes. Yeah. How did you lead
It's absolutely true. What we're trying to do, what I'm always aiming for in any of these interactions is that I want the other person to feel like they are sitting across a table with me, having a cup of coffee, having a good conversation. So we're aiming to replicate that feeling. Within that feeling, one of the big issues is body and facial orientation. Where are you pointed? Because if you're in a room mingling with people, no one wants to talk to the person who's always facing away.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to your ear. You might
looking
have
for
a
the
very
next
nice
person they would
ear,
like
but
to
I don't
talk
want
to.
to talk to your ear. Mhm.
So you can't do that on camera. And with the camera angles, the angle that you are describing, I fondly call the recluse.
Mhm.
With those camera angles, that is not for, again, our like brainstem level
Mhm.
communication
Right.
brain, which you
Mhm.
cannot override.
Mhm.
Very difficult to override it. Those weird angles are not how we would normally look at one another.
Right. Mhm.
So if we're sitting, you would never have a meeting looking up someone's nose. I'm assuming you're not running that kind of business. Same thing with looming down at someone and being forced to look down at someone's head gives you that feeling of looming over them. So you want to replicate that across the table feeling, which is you are facing your camera, shoulders squared, face oriented towards, with ideally about a 1/8, 7/8 of your body in there.
Right.
If you're too close to the camera, feels like you're crowding them. It's like it's like the close talker in the elevator, which no one likes. So you aim for just a little bit of space.
Yeah, about a hand width. I always do this wrong. About a hand width above your head and the top of the screen.
Yep. And ideally, you definitely, like, your shoulders are visible, Deb. That's absolutely great. Ideally, I go for
a little bit more
solar plexus up, because then when you gesture, it's easier for people to see your gesture. And that's about,
you don't have to be quite so effusive.
Not always possible to be far enough away from the camera for it. So as long as at the very least your shoulders are visible, that's good.
Right.
But sternum and up is ideal. Then it will feel like they're across the table. The interaction will feel a lot more natural.
Right. It's not like I'm at the kids' table and the only part of me is showing. Now, okay, I do have a confession about part of why I have the camera. And it is for those who are listening, it is pretty much just my shoulders that are showing, a little bit more than that. But, many times, we were kind of talking about dress. And so, many times I'm sitting here in a t-shirt, and so if you're going to see more of me, then you're going to see what my t-shirt says. Now, this time I actually have my Power Hour, my business Power Hour polo shirt on. So it would be good if I had that branding, right? But I don't always want that. Now here's my little trick that I tell people. So, we could be called into a Zoom at any minute. Even though we're in our home, are you going to run off and change? Yada, yada, yada. No, probably not. So back here behind me, I keep my basket of scarves. And so I can whip a scarf out, wrap it around real quick. And there we are. We're very professionally dressed.
Yes. Oh man, tricks like that are fantastic.
Yeah, as long as it matches, the t-shirt matches the scarf. And so I have like 4 scarves in there that, are pretty much going to match anything that I wear. And so, so then all of a sudden I'm professional, but I love it. You also talk in your book about pants. How many of us don't wear, okay, we're going to avoid talking about the people who don't wear pants at all.
But wasn't Rand Paul's dad one of them? He got caught on camera. Yeah.
It's like, no, we don't need to know what your tidy whities look like.
Don't need to see it. I don't know what it is with these dudes showing up without pants.
I know, it's funny. There's a commercial here in the States that is running where the gentleman comes out and he's got a nice top on, but his tidy whities, and he bops into the room and he's not paying attention, and he's and he tells his wife, so now when are we going to start the Zoom? And he turns around and there they are. They're in person, and there he is. But yeah, it's, at least wear nice shorts, because you never know. There might be something where you have to stand up.
That's just it. That's kind of my baseline, is as long as the pants look good on camera. Because again, I will live in my flannel jammies if you give me half a chance, right? As long as it looks good on camera, it doesn't need to be trousers,
right?
The nice fine pleat down the middle. Yoga pants are very doable. I've seen plenty of athleisure wear that works perfectly well on camera, because with the angles and
I wear shorts, picture, so
it looks fine. It looks fine. My litmus test is that if you suddenly had to stand up to grab that document out of the printer, or chase the dog or the kid out of the room, or turn off the beeping appliance, whatever. If you suddenly had to stand up, would you be embarrassed?
Right.
If the answer is no, you can wear it.
Right. Yeah. Now I can get away with not wearing shoes. Because they're not going to see my feet.
No. Heavens, no, I'm not wearing shoes. I mean, realistically, if we did go back to in person and I could attend every speaking event without shoes on, I would be a very happy lady.
My comfy flip flops and yeah. So
long live Crocs. I would be a very happy person.
Right.
But it's always, if something happened and you suddenly stood up, because what I find people tell themselves is, I'm going to remember. No, you won't. No, you won't. In that instant, you will forget that you have your buffalo check,
especially if there's a crash, there's something, something where you are standing quickly. Yeah. It's just, and would, now I have black shorts on. These would probably be okay. I wouldn't be terribly mortified.
Exactly. As long as you're not going to be mortified, please put them on, because the frequency with which this mistake happens is still mind boggling.
I know. And let's be honest, this is gentlemen. Now it's also women in their jammies and things like that. Because I've seen some jammies. I'm like, oh, okay.
I've seen plenty of jammies. They'll be looking at like me on the top and a little heart.
Are you a Big Bang Theory? I love the television show, The Big Bang Theory.
Oh yeah.
You're professional on top and Hello Kitty on the bottom.
Absolutely. So that's the thing, is as long as if you have to stand up, it'll be fine.
Right.
Good, but don't trust yourself to remember to turn the camera off.
Right.
Because you will forget.
Or don't think that it's not going to show. Because we all think, well, I'm seated, and
if that camera bumps down, and a lot of this sort of thing really is about lightening the load on yourself as well. If it's one less thing you have to worry about, then it's one less thing that you're worrying about. Same thing with your clothes. If you like how you look on camera, now it's less distracting for you. You won't be studying your image thinking, oh, I shouldn't have gone with that shirt. Oh, my hair's a mess.
Right.
If you are happy with how you look, you no longer have to pay attention to it. So it's funny, when we're doing things right, it fades into the background.
Yes.
And that's good, because then what we're doing is focusing on the interaction. Then you are having a good virtual meeting.
Right. Let's talk about backgrounds, because that's one of those things, again, when we first leaped into this, and especially when people, on Friday they were at work, Monday they weren't. And so they didn't have time in many cases to set up a home office, and so the unmade bed was back there, and all sorts of things. But we're here, folks, get over it, do something. And, I was watching an ESPN, program the other day, and they had zoomed in, and I got so focused on trying to figure out what books were on the guy's bookshelf that I was not paying any attention. Now I have books behind me, but you can't see what they are. They're more just pretty. And now I did have a Zoom consultant on the program. And so, we talked about this, and she said, so I have a big blue microphone, and it is big and it is blue. Now, could I put it somewhere else? Conceivably, and then I knock it over. I mean, and so this just works better if it hangs here by my ear. And so she said, okay, blue is going to be the theme. Plus I have very blue eyes, which is kind of hard to tell with my glasses, but she said, okay, we're doing blue. And so the picture behind me is a very demure blue flowery thingy. But you're not trying to figure out what it is. It's just there. So it's not, this totally blank nothing. And then I've got a plant. And you have plants. Plants are really good. Now this is a fake plant. I kill real plants. Yeah. Because
but they look good. They work.
Yes, yeah. And it's a little pop of color, without being distracting. Now I did think, I wonder if those are real, but that was that. And then I have my Hobby Lobby, antique microphone back here that says the Business Power Hour.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it's, and we do understand that people have limited space.
Yes.
So there's things called curtains. There's things called screens. There's ways that you can have a background that, isn't going to be so terribly distracting.
There's so much that you can do with your background. And this really is, for many people, a missed opportunity to brand themselves and reinforce their message in a way that can be nuanced.
Right.
That can be very, very personal though, too. So you can use your background to show the personality that you want people to see. So If you want people to really know you for your meticulousness, let's say you run an accounting business.
Right.
And you specialize in dealing with audits. You are meticulous. You are precise. Maybe have something like a very minimalist backdrop.
Right. You don't want clutter.
You don't want clutter where when things are on the table around you, they are cleanly arranged. So very clear, lean lines, strong structure will give that impression of meticulousness. If you're a more personal service-based business and you want people to feel comfortable and cozy, then have some textures in there. Use warmer colors that will evoke the feeling.
Yeah, you've got a great, it looks like green background with a white curtain to kind of break it up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. This was all very deliberately planned. For years I was rocking a bright sky blue wall that I loved.
Right.
I had the bookcase, but at the time I was mostly doing one-on-one coaching calls when I was virtual. Most of it was one-on-one. So it gave a different vibe. But with the pandemic, as all of my talks, keynotes, conference talks, everything now is online. What I wanted was a more neutral, as you would say in theater, black box feel, because it doesn't say much of anything. And when you're working in that environment, when you're giving a keynote talk, when you're doing a conference, you don't want to layer in non-host branding.
Right.
So, I don't want to have my stuff up back there because that shouldn't be detracting from who brought me in, who paid for me to speak. So I don't have any kind of branding like that in the background, but this helps to balance out the white for my camera. So it makes my camera work better. This works well. That dark charcoal wall works really well for creating nice backlighting. So I have more depth to this corner, and the plants just break up the color. So very, very simple, but you can, I love the fact that you have the Power Hour branding behind you. That is really clear. One of my clients didn't really care for her space, but what she ended up doing was getting a trade show banner from her office. She walked into the office, said, "We're not using these." Took a trade show banner. Stuck that behind her, and it is fantastic. Right. We know it's not your room, but it's consistent. The one thing I do not recommend are virtual backgrounds.
Oh, I hate those. Uck.
Hate them with an absolute passion. Now, fortunately, most people are no longer doing the look at me, I'm in the Bahamas sort of kitschy background. That's not happening anymore, but you're seeing a lot of corporate branded background. So whatever your company logos are, those are up behind you, or the fuzzy, the out of focus virtual background layer.
Oh yes, the blurred background. Because I'm not going to show you what's behind me. I'm not going to show
you what's behind me. And the difficulty with those is, for one thing, they don't give us a feel for who you are.
Right.
The corporate branding, yes, but I prefer an actual physical vinyl
you
banner.
Could have your logo up there on the wall behind you.
Yes, you can absolutely do that. It's still contextually appropriate, but anytime you have a virtual background, you run the risk of pixelation. So unless you hold very, very still and only gesture to the inside of your body.
Yes, because your hand will disappear.
Your hand will get chopped off. Or a corner of your head. I see that a lot with
they turn their head and half their face is gone.
Is gone. And that's brutally distracting. And as soon as we see that it's not your actual background, our brains are now saying, where are you? Where are you really? What are you doing?
Yeah. There was back to that comment, are they really working? Okay. Clearly they're working, but where? And there was an old Simpsons episode where Mayor Quimby was on vacation, but he was pretending to be in his office, and he's in front of a fake background of his office, and it's all working out great until a guy on a kettle drum comes walking by in front of him. And you laugh, but there was a couple of really sizable scandals up in Canada over Christmas break, where various MPs and MLAs, our elected officials, were caught off on the tropical vacations that no one was supposed to be taking because we're all in lockdown. Yeah, you were in lockdown. So how come you got to go somewhere else?
How come you have to go there? They've hived in one case to St. Bart's. And what they had done was they pre-recorded messages to send out on social media while they were away, crackling fire, cup of hot cocoa in hand, how very Canadian. But otherwise, they were using fake backdrops of places like Queen's Park in Toronto. And they were caught.
Right.
And you could
Because
tell that they weren't where they said they were.
well, and
but now everyone knows. And now no one trusts what they see.
Mhm.
So you don't want to
Right.
interrupt the
Mhm.
trust by being somewhere that where clearly you're not.
right. Yeah.
No virtual backgrounds.
Most
even if
of
you're in a
us don't have cameras and bandwidth and computers that can do it well. I mean,
Yes.
we are not the people producing Star Wars. And
It's not
even when
impossible.
you watch those, you can look at
Yeah.
it and go, that's a fake background.
Fake
I mean,
background.
even television programs. I forget what I was watching last night when I'm like, they're in front of a green screen. And and it was just, you could pick up on the fact that there's just subtle
It's not
differences.
quite right.
Yeah. It was
not
like,
quite right.
yeah.
It's
like
not
that,
impossible.
it was
but
showing that it
takes
was
a lot of
windy in
effort.
the background, but their hair wasn't moving. I mean,
Yeah,
like
something like that. And the thing is that it's not impossible to do a good
Mhm.
virtual background,
right.
but it takes the right equipment.
Mhm.
You need a really good green
Mhm.
screen. You need a really good camera and a fast connection,
Mhm.
and you have to understand how to move.
Mhm.
And again, for your average entrepreneur, small business owner, do you want to have to put in
Right.
that kind of thought?
No.
All you need for those who are in
Mhm.
tiny spaces, because I've worked with people
Mhm.
in tiny little 250 square foot Manhattan
Mhm.
apartments, all you need is about 2 square feet behind your head.
Right.
A blank
Mhm.
wall is fine.
Mhm.
Back that sucker up
Mhm.
to your wall if you want to
Mhm.
make it look interesting. Hang some,
Mhm.
art like the flower that you
Mhm.
have behind you.
Mhm.
Hang something up,
Mhm.
and then you're done.
Right.
Put up a curtain
Mhm.
or a shoji screen if you
Mhm.
have to block off the rest of
Mhm.
your apartment. You're done.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
These fixes are
Right.
not difficult, but they
Well,
take thought and planning
right.
and intention.
And don't assume people won't notice.
Yeah,
I was
don't
talking
assume
to
people won't
somebody
notice.
who she was doing all of her meetings. She was the team leader, all of these various things. She was in her bedroom, like many people were. And she said, I never thought anybody noticed at all what was behind me until somebody said, hey, I really like that bedspread. Where'd you buy it? Now her bed was made. I mean, it wasn't like, but she was like, oh my gosh. She said, I had no idea they were actually paying attention to that. And she went up, that was, and so she immediately rethought what she was doing, but that just never occurred to her. And I'm thinking again, you're seeing what they're seeing. Why aren't you catching this?
Yeah. And usually because we don't see what they see. We're
Right.
used to seeing our own space.
Mhm.
So it doesn't occur to us.
Right.
What I can find really helps is actually opening up a virtual meeting with yourself
Mhm.
and recording yourself
Right.
for a few
Mhm.
minutes and then stepping away
Mhm.
for a couple hours or a
Mhm.
day and then watching it again later.
Right.
Because now you have fresh eyes on it
Mhm.
and you'll go, ooh, that I want to change.
Well, and that's also going to help you with, is your audio good?
Is
all
your
of those
audio good?
various
Yeah.
things. Mhm.
So much of this, Deb, really is about being very intentional with this communication medium. Don't assume that you are flipping on a camera and a microphone
Mhm.
and you're off to the races.
Right. Mhm.
Any communication medium, you have to understand how it works and spend time thinking with it, working with it.
Mhm.
Does it need to be a meeting?
Mhm.
Does the meeting need to have the cameras
Right.
on?
Mhm.
Can this be a cameras off meeting for everyone? Great. If you've thought about it with intention, you can make the correct call on that.
Right.
Is my background good enough? Look at it with attention. Am I wearing something that is reinforcing the message I want to send? Intention, intention, intention.
Right.
And once you've got those pieces in place, you're set.
Right. And the other thing is, what is around you?
Yeah.
It's funny. My husband works from home now, and I have a light. I bought this on Amazon. Now we have a big house, and so this is not usually a problem. But the big house has, he can't tell if I'm doing something like this, and so my light says on the air. It's like $12. I mean, no big deal. I just have to remember, turn it on, turn it off. But warning your kids, now is not the time to come wandering through. What are your pets going to do? I have 2 cats. If I shut the door, we're going to have and so I have learned, I just let them do. And it's really bizarre because normally they'll come and they'll go and they'll be in here talking to me. For some reason, when I am doing this, now I have an earpiece and so all they hear is me. I'm pretty sure they're thinking, oh no, crazy lady's talking to herself again. Don't go in there.
It's calling me.
Yes. Yeah. And so they stay out. But, setting those expectations so that, your kids know, okay, mom, dad is, they can't be bothered right now. I did it was an interview for the podcast. And this gentleman had shut his dog out. And we spent the first 10 minutes with, and I finally said, open the door, but you do have to be aware of, are they going to be a distraction? Is the cat going to go wandering across? Is the dog going to bark? I mean, all those various things.
If the dog's going to be scratching at the door, maybe it's not closing your door. Maybe it's closing the dog in the bedroom.
Yeah. Put the dog somewhere else.
Put the dog somewhere else. Exactly. I like to tie the intentionality that we want to bring to our virtual meetings, just like we would if we were taking a client out for coffee.
Right.
If you take them out for coffee at McDonald's, you're sending a message. And depending on the client, that might be the right message. Right. But if you have found that fancy little hipster cafe in that fancy apartment downtown, and you've chosen to take them there, even though it's much less convenient,
right?
That's because there's a message that's being sent.
And if your kid wanders in,
meetings, it made sense. We need to think about that for this too.
Right. Yeah. And it was funny. I was thinking as we were doing this, I think part of the problem that we have is we've become that selfie world. Yeah. Where we pick up our cameras, we take the quick picture, and we don't even think about it, and we don't even care. But it's that word that you were saying, intentional. Yeah. We have to stop and think, what is the impression people are going to get? And maybe flip it. If I were to look at that, what would I think? Would I be thinking, what are the book titles back there? That was one of the things that my Zoom consultant had me do. I had lots of inspirational sayings back here. They were great. I loved them, but people were going, what's that say? What's that say? And at least they were nice and inspirational. I mean, but yeah, what is the intent? And again, we just want people to be professional, because as we said at the very start, this is not going away, folks. Nope. Get used to it. I saw an article, I think it was just yesterday, that Zoom is getting ready to release a whole bunch of new features that are designed for hybrid situations. So virtual whiteboards, where if you're in person, you're actually writing on the whiteboard, but it's virtually showing up to the attendees who are on Zoom. All sorts of things. I mean, it's just going to be fascinating to see what they come up with. And
don't just get used to the idea that this is now here permanently. This is now a mainstream mode of communication. Embrace it.
Right. We can talk to people around the world. You're 2,000 miles away from me?
Something like that. It's got to be a good 16-hour drive straight north, at least, if not more.
Right.
But, there's so many awesome things about this communication medium, even if you don't like being on camera, even if you're not comfortable with the technology. Instead of fighting it, say, what can I do with this?
Right.
How can I make myself clear? How can I make it easier? How can I bring across the polish that I want? And once you start doing that, you really do take charge of the medium and you start to make it work for you instead of being an enormous stressor.
Right. Well, for those people who are going, oh my God, I don't know what to do. They need to contact you. So tell us how they reach you. Oh, wait. Okay. We need Vanna. Do the book, show the book. So the book is called Unmute: How to Master Virtual Meetings and Reclaim Your Sanity. That's obviously a great option, but tell us how people find you and connect with you online, and then tell a little bit about how you work with people.
Absolutely. Well, the easiest way to find me online, of course, is my website, laurensergy.com, LaurenSergy.com. You can easily email me, lauren@laurensergy.com. I'm very responsive, but usually within 48 hours. It depends on what's going on at the time. And I've got a ton of really helpful videos, tips, tricks, interviews on my YouTube channel. Again, just Google Lauren Sergy. With the book Unmute, this is a fun, I'll do my own little commercial here. It's fun, it's fast, it's funny.
It is.
A lot of this is frankly hilarious that we're going through.
It's the things that we've done wrong and are learning from.
Exactly. But the idea is that this is basically a thin book that's going to give you all of the practical advice that you need to take control of your Zoom, to manage your Zoom schedule, to deal with all of that sort of stuff. And it's available at your favorite local online retailer, or head to unmutebook.com.
Perfect.
And that'll take you straight to the page with all of the necessary links.
I love it. I love it.
And the way that I work with people, I work with individuals, one-on-one coaching, usually at the senior leadership or owner level. But I also do a lot of team training. So if you want everyone on your small business team to be bringing it, let me know and I can do group training sessions.
Perfect.
And of course, you can also catch me at various conferences and speaking circuits and whatnot.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Well, this has been so much fun. And, like we said, this is here to stay. It's funny, Zoom is now become the verb and the noun, right?
Yeah.
It's like Xerox, it's like Kleenex, all of those other things. It's just become the way we do it. We're going to be using a different platform and still call it Zoom, and they'll get all bent out of shape. But, it is here to stay, folks. And so we do need to embrace it. And so I encourage people to connect with you, read the book, all those great things. It's been a fascinating conversation. And do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
This medium can make you look so good. Oh, it can make you look so good. So put in that little bit of effort, picking your basic uniform, figuring out your quick swap. I love your box of scarves, your quick change costumes, as I call them. Figure out how you want to dial in the backdrop, and always say, is this the best medium for the conversation that I want to have? If so, make the most of it.
Perfect. I love it. Well, I've been having such a fun discussion with Lauren Sergy. I'm Deb Creer. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.